Greetings and welcome to my needs assessment presentation for EDUC 733, Instructional Systems Design, a course taught by Dr. Christopher Mangan at Liberty University. My name is Robert Ranstadler. I am currently enrolled at the School of Education pursuing an Executive Certificate in Instructional Design and Technology. The following is a mock presentation aimed at fostering buy-in for an instructional design project created to address chronic performance issues at a fictional airport located in an imaginary city based on some of my firsthand experiences. Let's get started. Council members, members of the board, Director Smith, and members of the airport management team, welcome to today's meeting. As you are all aware, HRA is facing a dire situation. Following years of mediocre inspections riddled with recurring problems and chronic discrepancies, the FAA is now threatening to suspend or even terminate commercial air service at the airport. To say the least, such a development would prove problematic, especially for the people of Harmonton and our regional air travelers who depend on the airport. Losing the ability to host commercial airlines and air cargo carriers at the airport would devastate the community, with economic and political repercussions of a potential closure reverberating for months and years down the road. All of us, regardless of our differences, think, live, and operate within and beside a variety of systems. Some of these are simple, such as the traffic laws you obey during your daily commute. Other systems, like the elaborate algorithms used to model artificial intelligence, are complex. Regardless of their scope or complexity, systems all have one thing in common. They provide meaningful and structured ways to interpret the world around us. Systems thinking is a framework, or mindset if you prefer, that allows performance improvement and talent development professionals to systematically and systemically identify and solve problems. Conceptually, this all sounds great, right? I suppose the next question on the tip of everyone's tongues, however, is how does system thinking look in practice? That's where intentional design comes into the picture. You might have heard it referred to by different names such as instructional design or human performance improvement. Regardless, the purpose of intentional design is twofold. The first aim is to identify differences between actual and desired conditions, or put another way, current and ideal outcomes. The second major purpose of the design process is facilitating the development and implementation of corrective plans, called interventions, to bridge the gap between actual and desired performance. Ideally, all this is done using the least intrusive and most cost-effective means possible. Next, I'm going to share with you a step-by-step systems approach to solving problems here at Harmonton Airport using the power of intentional design. What's worth pointing out, however, is that this proposal is not a magical elixir or a silver bullet that will cure every problem overnight. Instead, think of it as a treasure map that by itself is useless. Placed in the hands of a determined group of explorers, however, the promise of great fortune lies ahead. I alone am incapable of designing all the solutions to your problems. Together, however, we will prove unstoppable. It's often said that the best place to start is at the beginning. With that, let's take a minute to consider Harmonton Regional Airport's visual identity. In other words, what do people think of when they see the airport? As airport stakeholders and leaders, what sort of image do you want to convey to regulators, potential business partners, and the traveling public? Geographically, the airport is conveniently located within moderate distance of two major cities and a variety of popular attractions. Harmonton's modest population also means short lines and less wait time boarding flights. Passengers can still expect the same level of service, however, that they would receive in a larger metropolitan or international airport. Although the airport doesn't set ticket prices, it does a good job of offsetting the cost of air travel by offering ticket-holding passengers up to 2 weeks free parking and connecting public transportation to several downtown attractions. Lastly, HRA has an impeccable safety record, free of any commercial air carrier accidents over almost 4 decades of service. Although all these are admirable qualities, take a minute to ask yourself how the current problem, which is the FAA threatening to suspend commercial service, reflect on the airport. Do the staff training and maintenance documentation problems cited on your last few inspections align with the image of an airport that offers convenient, affordable, and safe air travel? Next, let's revisit Harmonton Regional Airport's mission statement. It says, quote, Harmonton Regional Airport is committed to fostering the economic development of the City of Harmonton by supporting the aeronautical needs of the local community and regional patrons in a financially responsible manner. The first time I read this, it was clear to me that airport leadership had a clear sense of purpose, but let's talk about a few key points. First, fostering economic development requires the trust and buy-in of all stakeholders and business partners. How difficult do you suppose it would be to build trust if the airport lost its commercial air service? What sort of message would this send to current partners and future candidates? Also, consider the economic devastation that would be wrought on the local community if the airport's primary source of aeronautical revenue, commercial airline service, was removed from the picture. According to this statement, airport leaders are expected to act in a, quote, financially responsible manner, unquote. Is risking the HRA's Part 139 operating certificate financially responsible behavior? For better or worse, every organization has a culture. As is the case with businesses across the globe, some aspects of HRA's culture are good, others not so good, and a few downright ugly. On the bright side, there are more good things to share than there are bad. Unfortunately, the bad and ugly sometimes outweigh the good. First, the good. The feedback gathered from a recent survey indicates that employees enjoy working at HRA because it provides them a strong sense of belonging. Most find purpose in serving their community and find meaning in their work. Next, the bad. Unfortunately, nearly all respondents felt that the airport and city leaders assigned them little value, as is evidenced by their low wages and long hours spent at work. In doing a bit of research, I discovered that the starting wage for an airfield operations specialist at HRA is 30% that of neighboring airports. Also, director and assistant director pay is a whopping 45% below the regional average for similar positions across the area. Budget shortfalls are also preventing the hiring of new staff that, in some cases, cost the city considerable overtime pay. In other instances, some staff are forced to work uncompensated overtime hours. Either way, the result is that many respondents self-reported that they felt personally and professionally undervalued. Finally, the ugly. From the Airport Advisory Board down to the most junior employee, most respondents self-reported growing friction between various levels of airport leadership, the Airport Advisory Board, and the City Council. Some even went as far to claim that policy decisions being made at the City Council level were being done out of political self-interest rather than serving the needs of the airport. Regardless of where anyone individually sits on this issue, it's clear that the organization is suffering from communication and teamwork issues. We'll have to come together if we want to fix it together. Speaking of planning and communication, let's set our eyes towards the future. The vision of HRA's Airport Advisory Board and Management Team is to, quote, meet their obligations through the safe and efficient operation and development of aviation infrastructure needed to support local communities. We will remain accountable to all airport stakeholders, including the constituents of Harmonton, our employees, airport tenants, regulatory agencies, and other vested bodies, unquote. While this is an admirable vision, we must step back and again ask ourselves, are we performing to our own expectations? The devil is in the details, and the data never lies. It can, however, be misleading if not properly interpreted. As you see on this table, the last time the airport successfully passed its annual FAA periodic inspection was 2020. The airport director at the helm during that time had been in her role for nearly 10 years and brought a wealth of experience to the table. The extra hours that her staff put in preparing for the inspection cost city taxpayers approximately $2,000. The overtime needed to prepare for the inspection resulted from extra hours required to locate, organize, and file paperwork in preparation for the inspection. The cost estimate is not reflective of the hours the airport director invested in preparing and delivering instructional materials such as handouts, lesson guides, and quizzes to airport staff. Following the retirement of that director, 3 new directors joined and left the airport. Over the course of that 36-month period, FAA inspectors continuously unearthed recurring problems in the airport's Part 139 personnel training and maintenance documentation program. The current director inherited many of these uncorrected problems, which has led to the current crisis. You'll undoubtedly notice that the rising cost of each inspection. These are presented in adjusted dollars and derived from feedback obtained via questionnaires that I cross-reference against management and employee pay stubs. Essentially, the city is paying more and more each year for airport directors to chase their tails and put out fires in the months leading up to and following annual inspections. In short, the current system is broken, and it doesn't work for several reasons. Some of these are related to high turnover at the airport director position. Other problems stem from the relative experience of the past several directors and the administrative architecture of the airport. Still, there are others related to less tangible matters, such as incentives to perform and certain qualities of the learning environment. As I mentioned at the outset of this presentation, intentional or instructional design has real value, but it's not a magic cure-all for every situation. It's also something that one person cannot undertake in isolation. I can do my very best to get to know you and your staff, but nobody knows your business better than you do. With that in mind, I've put together a short list of tentative instructional solutions. I did so while following the instructional design and system thinking process that we covered earlier in this presentation. These are what I like to call partially informed solutions, because I produced them on my own without your inputs or feedback from other stakeholders. Put another way, all these bullet points represent starting stages from which we can shape and implement future interventions aimed at providing real solutions. One of the first ideas that immediately came to mind was outsourcing training and development work to a qualified third party. This would lessen the burden on an overworked management team that already has many competing priorities to deal with. In lieu of having someone else take care of your training needs, it might be advisable to provide the director and assistant director with some formal training in staff development or the Part 139 process. Although they are both capable, industrious, and intelligent leaders, they lack any direct experience in these areas. Having a professional show them the ropes might go a long way in solving some recurrent training issues. Another idea would be to purchase and implement a web-based learning management system, or LMS. Although this would require an upfront investment of time and resources, the LMS would likely pay for itself in the long run. For anyone unfamiliar with learning management systems, just know that they sit at the cutting edge of modern learning, and are some of the most effective means of delivering instruction available. Incentivizing training through the awarding of digital badges or micro-credentials is also another option. Employers would also be able to possibly provide learners with more tangible awards for completing required training, such as bonuses or paid time off. Lastly, and perhaps most importantly, is establishing clear and open lines of communication, both inside and outside the organization. City council members must be informed about what's going on at the airport so they can respond to changing needs and demands. Employees and management should likewise have a more active voice in policy decisions made that affect the airport. There are many benefits to pursuing some of the interventions mentioned on the previous slide. They include decreasing the cost of activities related to preparing for and recovering from annual inspections, particularly those associated with increased overhead stemming from countless hours of overtime needed to get things right with the FAA. Better performance in freeing up employees from having to complete reams of paperwork will permit them to address shortfalls and problems in other areas during their allotted shifts. And most importantly, keeping your commercial certification or regulatory compliance to better serve the public and the people of Harmonton. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope that this presentation has in some way shown everyone that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and that the solution lies in intentional design. Are there any questions?